Welcome to Founder Freedom, from Hustler to CEO, the podcast built for e-commerce entrepreneurs and small business owners who are ready to work less, earn more, and scale smarter. Today we sit down with Mark Tinus, the visionary behind Simple Times Mixers, a clean label beverage brand that's rewriting the rules of small batch production and sustainable manufacturing. Let's get into it with Mark. Hey Mark, welcome to the show today.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, can you give everybody here a little pitch about the value proposition for Simple Times Mixers?
Yeah, of course. We, as you mentioned, are a clean label beverage company specializing specifically in cocktail mixers and cocktail syrups. And so all of our products are made from scratch in-house here under our own manufacturing. So process over 27 different fruits and produce items and batch them into high quality, tasty, but easy to use cocktail mixers.
Nice. Everybody loves tasty.
That's right.
So, what inspired you to create the brand?
So originally, I had spent my career in the alcohol industry, so beer, wine, spirits. I ended up starting my own craft spirits brand and had my own unique need, right? So the one beauty of beer and wine is if you can crack a top or uncork a bottle, you can enjoy the product. In the craft spirits side, we were equipping people with recipes on how to make cocktails. And so what we found was anything with multiple touches got a little intimidating for our core consumer. So we ended up developing our own set of mixers that were two touch, right? Add spirits, add us, have a craft cocktail, the same quality of a craft cocktail bar. So when we started making it, it started as a small pet project to help at-home users, and it superseded our spirits business in about 2 months. To which case we said, "Hey, why don't we turn to our left and to our right and work with our spirits competitors rather than working against them?" And so then Simple Times was born. That was back in 2017.
Nice. That's a nice, well-aged brand.
Yes, that's
Like
right.
it. I like it. So, what major challenges or gaps, I guess, did you see in the marketplace that kind of led you to chase Simple Times Mixers brand?
Yeah, of course. I mean, 8 years ago doesn't sound like a century ago, but it was pre-COVID. So I guess the way that we're marking our calendars now,
Right.
it was a little while back. And I'll be honest with you, the marketplace that we were looking at had very convenient, what I would say, high volume, low quality products in the marketplace with a lot of fructose corn syrup, a lot of, the already envisioned in your mind, I'm sure, neon green margarita mix that's on many, many end caps. But then there was this very artisanal and high end ingredients businesses, right? Simple syrups, bitters, so on and so forth. And what we found was there was a real gap in that synergy of the two, right? So super high quality and handcrafted, but also super easy to use, where you didn't need to write recipe cards and so on and so forth. So we've vehemently stayed away from communicating major recipe builds. There are definitely some of our consumers who make it even craftier than what we do. But what we're intending to do is say, hey, if you can take a splash of your favorite spirit or a soda water and add us, and you have the cocktail, that's really what we're going for. So that convenience and quality blend up was a little bit missing 8 years ago. Now that ultra premium market is starting to grow, and we're starting to see others join us in the space, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Because I think it promotes that kind of heavy need that there is from a consumer basis to have a quality proposition, but also convenience.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned, the option of mixing it with soda water, because that seems to be a growing trend too, is
Absolutely.
moving away from the spirits a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's catering across the entire industry as far as I just call it inclusivity, right? So whether you're drinking or you're not drinking, making sure that there's nobody that's necessarily having to completely depart out of that industry, right? And so in our world, where we are a non-alcoholic brand, you can mix with soda water, you can mix with spirits. Obviously, there's growing trends in the CBD, THC tincture side of the businesses as well. So as a beverage entrepreneur, you really need to be thinking about all the different facets of it. And I find it absolutely amazing, because when you used to think of non-alcoholic, you used to think of truly abstaining from alcohol, right? And actually, the
Right.
growing trend is in moderation. So,
Right.
where the majority of these non-alcoholic beverages are being drank, it's actually by people that are still drinking, but drinking in more moderation, right? So,
Yeah.
the mixer category has to lean into that to where there is a difference between just alcohol and non-alcohol. There's low proof, meaning, blending and having a lower alcohol
Mm.
content cocktail, all the way to no
Mm-hmm.
proof, which is truly non-alcoholic. So we try to keep
Yeah.
ourselves flexible and let the consumer pick, but we want to make sure that we're there for everybody.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea. So just in regards to the gaps that you described, what was the existing way of I guess serving the customer as opposed to what you guys are doing today?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a large variety of what our consumer, and I specifically kind of hone into our consumer, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we specifically cater to what I would call the middle 90%, right? So we're folks that want that at high end, but aren't necessarily that mixologist at home.
Yeah.
So they're a bit intimidated by the cocktail making process. I always joke around with my wife, who is a fabulous cook and can put 30 ingredients together and make an amazing meal, but she still has me
Mm-hmm.
make her cocktails,
Yeah.
which I find I can't make a hot dog.
Yeah.
It's shocking to me, right? So we joked around about that. So you had this top 5% who were crafting their own things at home, right? Juicing their own products, putting together 4 or 5 ingredients, making these very high-end cocktails. But it's very difficult when you're trying to serve a group of 4 versus yourself. And then there's
Right.
shelf stable issues, right? So you're juicing things yourself and it goes bad in 3 days if you don't use it. So we were kind of filling that gap of very easy to use, no mess, no fuss, but then also it has 4 weeks of additional shelf life in the fridge after you open it, right? So
Nice.
less waste, so on and so forth. So and when you get into that middle 90% in our world, we have a mission statement here which says empowering
Mm-hmm.
everyone to make the highest quality craft cocktails, right? And that empowerment piece,
Nice.
not to sound overreaching, but that empowerment piece is about overcoming the intimidation of making these craft cocktails. And we were just noticing a lot of folks that were out and about at craft cocktail bars, paying 12 upwards to $20 for a
Yeah.
cocktail. But then when they're at home, they're opting to have wine or, God forbid, Crystal Light and vodka right at their house. Because
So
they
true.
felt intimidated by this, craft cocktail movement. And so I say the one thing that's kind of nice about our core consumer is a lot of times we've invited them back into enjoying a cocktail at home because they may have been diverged away from that
Yeah.
in the past. And that Crystal Light story is a true story from my mother-in-law, who I've finally converted over to the real thing.
Good for you. I'm just laughing because I feel like that's like a Midwestern thing, and I can
Oh,
totally have a list of
100%.
people that are doing it today.
Send me their names.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to try to convert them with your products now for sure.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. I mean, you kind of talked about this, but let's just expound on the solution part of it. So, your product solved the problem of, the home mixologist a lot better because everything is done for you at a high quality product where we don't have to worry about drinking too much fructose
Yeah.
in our cocktailing situations, which only occur, not as frequently as they should, seemingly.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, as we, kind of dug into the solution, one of the biggest challenges I think for us was how to actually create a business that could solve this solution, right? So
Hmm.
many beverage entrepreneurs who are starting up their craft beverage set, the major crossroads for you as an organization is that, am I going to make it myself or am I going to contract manufacture it
Sure.
through others? And so I think one of the biggest challenges when we saw this gap in the market was how do you execute it, right? How do you get from fruit to cocktail to shelf stability to then marketing it out in retail or doing e-commerce, with the
Hmm.
product. One thing that we took the leap in, we could not find contract manufacturing that could make products the way that we wanted to make them. right?
Okay.
There's a very standardized approach to the beverage industry. There's mass production, there's high minimum order quantities,
Mm-hmm.
there's efficiencies that can be gained by that, but you better know hard and fast that you've got a winner on your hands. And we took a
Right.
slightly different approach. We rented a commissary kitchen. We made the first batch. We went out to a farmer's market and we tested it with consumers at a farmer's market. Then we came back and did
Mm-hmm.
two batches, two farmers markets, and so on and so forth. And that was,
Right.
8 years ago to where we got to today. So we've been able to tweak and modify based on the consumer response throughout it. I call it, we've been in this amazing 8 year long focus group
Mm-hmm.
that we have, solidified around a lot of touch points of data with people actually trying the product. But it was a big decision about 5 years ago. Do you go all in and create your own manufacturing facility to where
Yeah,
you can
for sure.
continue to have this flexibility, or do you end up farming it out for somebody that can give you some efficiencies on scale? And we chose to build out, and so we now have our own manufacturing facility here in Columbus, Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
It's entered into a realm of beyond just beverage, what we want to do from a sustainability perspective and food waste perspective. We've now created kind of two other offshoot businesses: a contract manufacturing for other folks that are sitting
Mm-hmm.
where I was sitting 8 years ago and
Yep.
and searching the market for it. And then B is an ingredients business, because when you process, I would say when you process the real thing, it just adds more responsibility to you. We can process upwards of 8 to 10,000 pounds of citrus in a day, and in which case
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of waste. There's about
Waste. Yeah.
5,000 pounds of that's not juice. And so what we do is we now are starting a business where we're taking the offshoot byproducts like the zest and certain things in the pith and repurposing
Mm-hmm.
that into cocktail syrup products, but then also partnering with other companies in the food space and in the beverage space to utilize these byproducts in their manufacturing processes.
Nice. That's so all encompassing. It's a really good mission on the sustainable side for sure.
Yeah,
I'm glad
it's
we're able
a
to talk
great
about that today
ecosystem.
because I think people need to hear about it. Probably about half of the people that I've been interviewing for the podcast that are in this type of manufacturing, sustainability seems to be a very big feature of the business model, right? Because like it's okay for us to make stuff, but what do we do with all that waste all the time,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
We're getting out of that as a country, I think.
Yeah, and I think with the way that a lot of folks, especially on the clean label side, your waste is so valuable, right? I mean, the other piece of this is, as we as a culture are gravitating more towards the real thing and less on the flavors
Hmm.
and the, artificial preservatives and things like that.
Right,
There is a lot of value in using the real ingredients, but there's also a lot of secondary and even tertiary uses, right? So we're even
right.
exploring the third level, which is we use the zest, for example, to make cocktail syrups. Well, is the byproduct of that then candied zest that we can use in the confectionery industry, right? So,
Oh, wow.
how do you continue to kind of draw the chain on where there's still value in your byproduct for others to use? And I had a great conversation with somebody in the sustainability industry who really broke it down for us, right? How do you become the true most responsible when it comes to byproduct processing? And I think a lot of folks, when we get interviewed, jump right to composting, right? So do you
Yeah,
compost?
yeah,
What do you do with your waste?
yep.
Because I do think that's the most understood side of it. But what they broke it down is, at the top level, you have using your byproducts to feed humans, right? Which is, repurposing into the food industry, using your byproducts to
Mm-hmm.
feed products that humans eat, right? So animal feed, so on and so forth in the
Mm-hmm.
industry. And then you get down into biofuel and energy production. Then it's composting, right? Which is just more of a responsible way of wasting the thing, right? So
Right.
so in a way, like the way that we've now broken down our mission when it comes into food byproduct usage, it's in that tiered system, right? That tier of
Right.
and we get it back into human consumption as the first rung, because we know we're helping the world a little bit better if we can get into that space first.
Yeah, that's a great explanation of the eco byproduct system. That's pretty cool. So, if folks are kind of like consumers, maybe looking at your product, like, what do you think is the biggest misconception that they might have about what your product does?
I think, I mean, I'll tell you, because I've heard it, is that we are a fancy juice company.
Okay.
Therefore we're shelved next to juice. And the reality is I think we've always kind of steadfast stayed in this realm of truly building cocktail mixers rather than juice, based
Sure.
products, which in our world really kind of falls into what makes a good cocktail, right? What's the science behind a great cocktail? A lot of folks will break it down into three categories, which is your pH level. What's your tartness? Does a cocktail have a lemon and lime in it? For a reason? Yes, because citric acid in those lemons and limes can control your pH very easily. Your
Mm-hmm.
sugar content, which is obviously the bricks in the way of describing it that way, and then your ethanol content or your alcohol content, right? So as we developed every single one of these flavors, and we've done over 81 different recipes in-house now that we've vetted through the FDA, every single one of them, I almost call it kind of we're playing target practice in the wind, right?
Mm.
So we're always aiming for what it's going to taste like after it's been mixed. So we modify the pH to be a little bit low. We have our bricks to be a little bit high. So then when you bring it back into balance with the alcohol, you have the most balanced cocktail. So that's the one explanation that we give as a huge differentiator from being a fancy juice company to being a true cocktail mixer
That's
company.
nice. That's nice. I mean, what resonates to me personally is what you said earlier, just that, you can do an instant mix without even thinking about it. And
Right. Exactly.
you don't have to hog up 4 feet of counter space to get your mixology done.
Right. Yeah, we make products for the people that want to drink cocktails and not be spending the time making them, right?
Yeah.
So that's
No,
that's a key. Probably because that's
I
what
like
I am.
it. I like it. Yeah, just like you described. I mean, it's for
Yeah,
real. This conversation happens in many households most weekends.
indeed.
For
Indeed.
sure. So, can you share a success story? It could be like a customer, a bunch of successes, or if you want to talk about your bigger company mission success, that would be awesome for people to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we ventured out into, well, and I it would be remiss not to pay homage to COVID because it had a huge part in our shaping of where we kind of directed our business. We originally viewed ourselves as a true kind of food service oriented company, B2B, push out volume and quality at the same time. COVID pushed us in a few other directions that opened us up into e-commerce
Mm-hmm.
uh, and other spaces, really focusing in on grocery and retail. But I'll give you a great success story. When it came to our B2B side, when we started the business, we tried to always view ourselves almost as a service before we were a product, right? So
Mm.
what are the solutions that we solve for our B2B partners when we were creating the business as a whole? And a lot of folks that come to work for us, had some stints in hospitality. So they've lived the cold hard truth of what it takes to run a bar or restaurant, having 2 hours of prep with your bartending staff who are juicing lemons and limes before a shift starts, throwing away rotten juice that's been sitting overnight out and about. I
Right.
mean, if you've worked the industry, you kind of know those problems as a whole. So we actually worked with a taco chain locally here in Columbus, Ohio, that had 15 units. And that's essentially what they came to us with. Before we ever talked products, I didn't even make a margarita yet. This is going back about 5, 6 years ago. And their number one complaint was from their owner was, I sit down at this location, I have a cocktail. At this time, it was a blood orange margarita. And I go to this location, I have it, and they don't taste anything like each other. And
Mm.
they have 4 ingredients in it. We think we've made it very simple, but it's 4 touch. And I said, well, look, every time you add a touch, it's up to your staff to keep it consistent, right? And we all know as COVID came on that turnover was a big thing, and we had a lot more staff training issues as the hospitality industry had to
Yeah.
fight its way through, staff shortages and so on and so
Yep.
forth. So what we did was we designed these mixers from scratch for them to implement across their 15 locations and essentially fix those major things: staff training,
Mm-hmm.
lack of, no more waste, controlling poor costs for them, as well as consistency of the quality of the drink across 15 different platforms. So we launched that all out in about a month's time from start of product development to implementation in store.
Yeah.
and got all of those accounts up and running. Real big testament to, I think, a couple things. One, the group that we were working with had identified that this was something that they really wanted to invest in and fix
Mm-hmm.
for the long-term growth. But two was our flexibility. When you have your own manufacturing facility, it's a lot easier to kind of pivot on a dime, tweak
Sure.
products, make sure that you're getting them there safely and done the right way. So it really helps the innovation and the product development side of things to have it here. That's one that was really kind of a turning point for us as a company when it came to the food service side of the business. And it's a customer we still work with to this day at every single one of their locations 5 years later.
Nice. That's awesome. Those are great relationships, and I mean, what a great way to stumble into product development, which we always,
Right.
a lot of entrepreneurs spend a lot of brain power thinking about it, but like it just
Yeah.
comes to you.
Yeah.
That's
Well, and it's
awesome.
beautiful too, because when we do that with a bar group, right, they already have the data to tell us we have this thing on this menu. We already know we sell X amount of
Right.
this thing, right? And so
Right.
you don't have to go in with guesswork. And it's very difficult with consumers these days. You want to exceed their expectations, you want to be crafty.
Sure.
But if you get too crafty, they may not have an expectation, right? Which is very difficult
Right.
to
Right.
exceed. So yeah, we
There is
run a fine line.
definitely a lot of disparity in the consumer side of this business.
Absolutely.
Because like you
And
said,
changing daily.
you could go to, an establishment that's doing hand mixed cocktails. You could wait the 7 minutes for them to do it. You feel good that you waited 7 minutes for the fee that they're going to
Yeah.
charge you, so it's fine. And then on
Yep.
the other hand, you could go to a resort and you're like getting a cocktail and it's done in like 2 seconds, and you're like, you better not charge me $25 for this because it didn't take you very long,
Right.
but it still tastes pretty good. It still tastes pretty
Yeah.
good nonetheless.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think that's been the challenge as we've gone through 8 years is I think the idea and the concept of mixer as a whole has been run through the mud
Mm,
for, generations, really. I mean, if you
yeah.
think about it for the last 30 years, it's gotten to the point where it's polarized in sugar content and, sugar hides ethanol. So higher sugar content means it could be used in more things to where we have a bunch of consumers who don't trust in the value proposition of a mixer. With the younger population coming up who maybe hasn't been so demoralized by the existing mixers in the market,
Right.
they're looking at it as more as, can I look at the label and what ingredients are involved in it?
Yeah.
The more and more we become a label reading conscious society, I think the space for folks to make easy but high quality and real ingredient products is continuing. And that's beyond just cocktails, right? That's snack foods, that's everything in
Yeah.
my opinion.
It's
But
everything in food. Yeah.
yeah.
So these are the kind of the consumer trends that are really helping to shape your industry and the food industry in general, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah,
consumers
absolutely.
being aware and conscious about what they're putting into their bodies now.
Yeah, I joked about it that I can't believe how far off I was with that until I had my own kids and started reading it for them. But their
Right.
generation is way more conscious of it than we were when we were younger. Not to bucket you with me, Stephen,
It's
that
true.
we're that you,
No, I understand what you're saying. I mean, it's interesting as a human being in my fees in comparison to the way that I used to think and what other young people are thinking about food today.
yeah,
Certain
absolutely.
things were acceptable to us, they're like old hat or whatever, but now you really do look at a lot of labels. I often amuse myself by watching people in the grocery store who are just like, they got their phone in
Yeah.
one hand and a product in the other hand, and they're reading the label, or they're using their phone to
Yep.
read the label because it's too small and they can't see it. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. So yeah, times have changed. Just in thinking about trends, like thinking about other business owners who might be listening to this, what advice would you have for business owners looking to stay ahead of the curve in whatever they're doing or avoid some potholes on the e-commerce side of things? We like to talk about e-commerce a little bit here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, for us, it's never stop listening, right? I mean, I think one thing that we've been able to do as we've grown is try a bunch of stuff, but fail quickly and that you sink into these failures. I think the nice thing with the flexibility today is that you can scale things a little bit easier without having to go all in at the beginning. And e-commerce has really created an amazing spot for us to do that. We kind of equate e-commerce as our DTC the same as we do our direct sale markets like farmers
Right.
markets and things like that, where we got our start from, where we can put a new product out, small production run, really gauge and measure the sales of it, really understand when we put a digital ad out, what are the measures that we want to make sure that we're gravitating to, whether that's conversion for you or creating additional clicks or reach. I
Right.
think having a good, hard, fast plan in place on how to measure those KPIs and then strike while the iron's hot when the consumers tell you that this is a good product, I think is one. But the listening piece is prevalent everywhere. I think
Right.
as much as we would like to be in a space of mindful thinking and separating from our phones and technology and all the things that we've talked about, it also gives you a lot of access to consumer conversations as a whole. What are folks saying on other brand pages? What are
Yep.
folks saying in media? What are influencers gravitating towards? This is one thing that we try to do pretty inherently throughout our conversations as a marketing and internal development team. And then my last thing I would say is don't get stuck too much in your own category, right? Consumables as a whole is tracking together. I always joke about that, cocktails and drinks for some reason always seem to lag behind other food products, right? Farm to table was a
Hmm.
big thing before farm to
Right.
glass was a big thing, right? So
Right.
when farm to table movement happened, you could kind of see this trend coming about 6, 7 years ago when that started to come out into the Midwest. Farm to table has always existed really on the coast, but
Sure.
as that started to move, we saw that as an opportunity in the craft space with beverage. But even beyond that, keep an ear to the ground when it was just a Coke and Pepsi wall across the aisle, right? So
Right.
that side of it is really kind of teaching, I think, a lot of the younger entrepreneurs the benefits of understanding the functions and the benefits that our younger consumers are looking at.
Yeah. That's pretty awesome. Good advice.
Thanks. Yeah.
So
I
look
tried
at
it now. I just have to remember it myself.
yeah. Yeah, you do. You do. That's the hard part. I mean, conversationally, things are easy, right? It's just making your
Yeah,
stuff
exactly.
yourself do stuff is not the easiest thing in the world.
That's so true.
So looking ahead, what's next for Simple Times mixers?
Yeah, a lot of the things that we've laid out here, the upcycled ingredients piece of our business, as well as the contract manufacturing piece, are still fairly infancy stages for us here in Columbus and
Hmm.
for Simple Times as a whole. So we're going to continue to push that avenue. We are constantly looking at how to stay flexible and evolve, excuse me, from a packaging set perspective. So we are investing more in the capabilities and capacities of our manufacturing facility to continue to adapt and grow, not only from a sustainability perspective, but also shipping and logistics, right? So for most of the e-commerce brands that you're talking to, as well as retail brands that we're focused in, logistics has become a huge, heavy part as you move from local to regional to national and then
Mm-hmm.
getting to international eventually, right? Is
Right.
that shipping and logistics piece becomes the heavier piece of it. So a lot of
Right.
time spent in there. We think, as far as the product development and innovations, we want to stay within our set. We want to continue to serve this clean label market from a contract manufacturing perspective, but we also want to be looking at alternatives that lighten the expense and the inherent costs of doing logistics around the entire country.
Yeah.
So lightning shipping, weights and looking at packaging solutions that can do that. We just actually recently switched off of all foam and all to curbside recyclable materials for our e-commerce packs,
Mm-hmm.
which had cost benefits, weight benefits, but also consumer benefits to it. So we're going to continue to look down those avenues, try and find things as they go. But like all small businesses, one foot in front of the other, make sure that we stay profitable so that
Yeah.
we can keep making an impact.
Awesome. Awesome. So how do listeners find your products, Mark? What's the best places?
Yeah, outside of some of the major chain retailers that we work with, like Kroger and Whole Foods and Meijer in the Midwest, always visit our website. We sell all of our products and then some that aren't even found in retail at our website at www.simpletimesmixers.com.
Nice. Well, that's a wrap, folks, on today's episode of Founder Freedom from Hustler to CEO. If Mark's grassroots hustle and big picture thinking inspired you, don't forget to share, rate, and subscribe. Your next breakthrough might be one story away. Until next time, keep building smarter, not harder.